Why don't we, before we kind of dive more fully into the conversation, why don't we just give ourselves a moment to center? So, whatever that looks and feels like for you, perhaps we can soften our gaze or close our eyes. And allow our attention to drop into our bodies. And allowing our bodies to drop into the earth. Maybe we can gently feel that continuous flow of energy from the earth's body through our body, the earth's consciousness and our consciousness. And have a soft sense of no separation between any of that. Just taking a moment to recognize the land that I'm sitting on, the unceded territories of the Stockbridge Munsee Mohicans, the land that the Kripalu Center is on, and holding an appreciation for how they gathered and played and celebrated and held ceremony on this land. Now we try to continue that work on the honoring of that. And then we just let all of that sense of practice go and allow our eyes to be open, but without losing the opportunity to stay in a place of practice as we're in this conversation. So I am delighted to welcome in Jack O'Keefe. I have a little blurb that I want to share about Jack. So Jack is a co-founder and president of the Association for Spiritual Integrity and the author of Born to be Free and How to Be a Spiritual Rebel, a dogma-free guide to breaking all the rules and finding fearless freedom. Jack's followed a disciplined spiritual path for over 25 years, including 15 years as an international spiritual teacher, and supports teachers and leaders in both their spiritual and personal development. A theology graduate with postgraduate studies in adult and community education, she's also a certified financial coach and facilitator of the right use of power. So Jack, it's so great to have you here. What everyone is going to realize in a few moments is that there's two Irish people that have been given microphones and some uninterrupted time. So we're sort of apologizing in advance if this needs sort of some form of like subtitles at the bottom so that you can understand us. I'm from Wicklow originally, and Jack is from Cork. Her accent's going to be more sort of traditional of what you see in the media than mine, but we'll speak faster than we normally do probably. And maybe if we need to explain a word or slow us down, you can help us out with that, because it's going to feel like myself and Jack are just having a cup of tea together. So welcome, Jack.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, everybody, for showing up and for bearing with us as we do a little bit of, I don't know, hanging out.
Hanging out, exactly. And so this, we've been doing these for a while, and this series is all about peace. And I'm going to give a little bit of context as to why we're framing it around the theme of peace. And we've been in a lot of deep reflection as an organization around what's happening in our world, sort of at the international level and also at the domestic level. And there's just an ongoing um, whisper from the land that we're on that Kripalu play a role in supporting peace in our world. And that's not about taking a side in any particular situation of conflict or war that's happening. For us, it's about actually holding what we're calling the in-between space. In Ireland, we call it the sort of the other place in between the sides. Can you step into the other place, the idir áit, and find a new way of being together, a new way of understanding each other? And so we've been doing that in different ways at Kripalu, including inviting in different groups that are involved in peace building around the world and domestically, and starting to do more work around skill building around dialogue. And how do we learn how to have dialogue again? How do we move back towards each other out of a place of curiosity and connection, and which will lead to deeper compassion? And domestically in the United States, where it's just intensifying with the presidential election cycle, and who knows what comes on the heels of that, regardless of who happens to be voted in as president and what happens with the Senate, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a long haul stretch for this country to be in a deeper conversation around peace. And so we thought, let's bring in some people like yourself and other folks over the coming months to talk about peace and how that connects with spirituality, how that connects with the land, how that connects with liberation. So that's what the sort of theme of this is all about. But before we kind of get into any of that juicy philosophical conversations, Jack, do you want to give us a few minutes on like where you come from and what floats your boat these days?
So reared on a dairy farm, youngest of 6 girls. So there was a strong work ethic, and we worked as a team. You have to on a dairy farm. And as soon as I could get out, of course, I did, as most of us do from our family of origin. And I've lived in a few different places. My spiritual path brought me to strange places. It kicked off very abruptly, like changed my life when I was 30. I'm 57 now. And that's when I suppose had some experiences, mystical experiences that made me kind of go, okay, I'm not ignoring this anymore. What's this? And if I dive into this, it's going to change my life. I had that knowing. I'm at a crossroads, and which path am I going to walk down? And as a result, I wasn't one for like being able to integrate it into my life. There was a deep dive. I lived in India for 4.5 years. There was a deep dive into like the hermit, pulling back from life, which has really, really taught me about how spirituality has been disconnected from roles that we can play in peacemaking, in social change, in climate change, these political elements that are don't need to be as problematic as they are. Where are the spiritual leaders? Where are we? And I'm really intrigued by like, the traditional path has made us pull apart and separate. And I suppose then when I, became a teacher, like about 20 years ago, and I did it full time for 15, that, it organically happened. I think that's kind of the healthiest way, when you simply get asked. Somebody builds you a website and somebody else invites you someplace, and off it goes. That's what happens to a lot of us. And you spend your life out of a suitcase touring and supporting people. And reintegrating in life is tricky. It's tricky. And we have libraries of books saying, this is meditation practice. This is how to pull away and keep good company and do this and go on this retreat. And, the micro of it is you go on a retreat and you're all still and it's all peaceful and it's beautiful. And 2 weeks later, it's like, I've lost it all. I've lost it all. And so that in the micro is the same in the macro. When spiritual leaders it's my experience, and I'm speaking for some others, not all, obviously, when we separate for years to go deeply within, there's no support for how we weave back into the world. There's no support. And what happens is that very often we grasp onto the perspective of enlightenment, awakening, the unity consciousness, even liberation, wherever it is, whatever your inner lens of perception is. If there's attachment to that, you're going to screw up, because the value system in the world can be more nuanced and more tricky than the value system of when we all are one and I want to completely deny any separation and that your needs are different to my needs. Oh no, there's no needs at all. So we have this culture now of where spirituality is outside a critical role that it needs to play.
Yeah. Thanks, Jack. And so how does the Association for Spiritual Integrity sort of step into that space?
Yeah. In 2017, there were 3 of us at a conference who presented something similar. It wasn't the theme of the conference, but we all spoke about teachers behaving badly. And I was like, well, why are we doing this? Like, really, why are we doing this? Why don't we know better? So out of that was born the Association for Spiritual Integrity, where we spent the first 3 years to like, actually, we need guidelines of good practice that everybody can, that dials into our humanness, which is what's common, and that our spiritual practice will not be at odds with it. Can we find where we share our humanity? Can we start there? So the code of ethics came from that, like value system that honors and meets our humanness. So, it's evolved into, like, I suppose, an educational organization, really attempting to bridge the gap. I feel like we're kind of like a droplet on this tsunami of social change. And we're one of the organizations looking at, well, what's the role of spirituality in the social change that's trying to happen globally? And this is our part. It's like, what can we do to evolve our thinking, to name and address the universal needs of spiritual leaders so that they're no longer hidden and denied, because that's what makes bad behavior happen. Undenied personal needs, out it comes through a dysfunction and somebody gets hurt. Whereas if a teacher can own their needs and connect with their humanness, all right, that's what the ASI wants to do, is like leave space for peer support where you can learn how to become vulnerable again in a safe place. But of course, there's many teachers, no, you're stuck in duality, Jack O'Keefe. You're stuck back in duality. And I'm like, okay, fine. But the thing is, if we go out far enough, the only place to go back in is to start all over again. It's like everything about our ecosystem and our incarnation is cyclical. It's always cyclical. So it's like, yeah, you got to go right back again and say yes to all of it, rather than I'm out. It's my last lifetime. I'm out. And I'm like, well, what are you pushing away? What are you scared of? What are you defending yourself from? They're the conversations I'm interested in. You know?
That emptiness, form into emptiness, and emptiness back into form.
Emptiness back into form.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen the ox herder images. It's a beautiful Buddhist sort of depiction. I think there were 7 at the beginning, and then when it eventually arrived in Japan, the Zen Buddhists added 2 more, and it's basically a depiction of the sort of a linear path of spiritual awakening. And it's the ox herder, and he's kind of like, he's chasing the ox, and then he's holding onto the tail of the ox, and then he's on the back of the ox, and then he's like leading the ox, and it goes on and on. And then the last image is this big sort of overweight Zen person who's, I think, got a satchel of wine around his waist, and clothes are kind of in tatters, and he's just in the market. And the Zen Buddhists were saying, yeah, actually the full expression of all of this is to be in life, to be in the fullness of the humanity of it, enjoying life, not denying, like have wine if you want to have wine. If that works for your body, enjoy some wine. It doesn't mean you're not a spiritual person.
That's right. That's
You know?
right. Yeah. And we got caught, didn't we, in this hierarchical model that there's a pinnacle and there's an external God, and or now it's the external guru or the perfect teacher, and it's a myth, it's not helpful at all.
Yeah.
It's shortcomings.
One of my favorite teachers, Adyashanti, he said, if you want a perfect teacher, follow a dead one. Because if they're alive, they're human, and you may not see what goes on behind the scenes. But there's. I think people were shocked when Adya told the story that he likes to barbecue and he likes to ride his motorcycle. People are like, how, what? How could you just? Are you not just meditating 20 hours a day? Like, no, I meditate when I feel like I need to meditate, or I want to meditate, and then the rest of the time I enjoy my motorcycle and I go rock climbing in the Sierra Nevadas or whatever it is.
Yes.
But we've such an idea of what a spiritual person looks like.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's pushback when we model being in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. There's pushback. The world isn't ready for that yet. There's this need for, I don't know, it's kind of like a child-parent relationship. Mm. We haven't matured out of that yet to where spiritual leaders are regular people. It's like we lose something, we have to grow up. We have to grow up. Yeah.
What do you think that developmental step is, or the developmental question is?
Yeah. Autonomy, self-honesty, owning our own needs, taking responsibility for them. And can spiritual leaders support the development of autonomy in their students, or do they want to create dependence? Because the teachers are guilty of sustaining it too. Mm-hmm. They want the followers. They want to be seen as holier than thou. Many spiritual leaders like when their students bow at their feet. It's like, to get off on that is very sticky.
Yeah. And then in certain cultural contexts, that really is appropriate and it really works.
Yes.
But not often in the westernized culture.
Yeah. No, not in ours. I think it's unhealthy in our culture. Mm-hmm. We don't have the context for that, except in a child-parent, disempowered model. There's ways of becoming a devotee where you are an autonomous adult.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so with all of this, the work at the association that you've been doing in your previous years of teaching, etc., how does this sort of thread for you with the work of showing up in the world and serving the world's great needs?
I have a long-term vision for the ASI. Many short-term visions, but my longer goal is that if we can continue to work with the culture of spiritual leadership, that in time, spiritual leaders will be, I'm beginning even to see a little glimmer of it, and I totally believe in the butterfly effect. We only have to do it in a micro, and the macro, it rolls out. Mm. My vision is that spiritual leaders will be comfortable in the marketplace, comfortable with the satchel of wine and the rags, and no glory or crown or halo or anything going on, but comfortable in their skin as a human being. And at the same time, are skillful enough to get involved in politics, to go for a job in the UN, to, start a climate change initiative or join a group on climate change, and simply bring in the wider view that you get from your spiritual work, bring that in, because we're the ones who have to bridge that into groups that are working on, social change. If we look at global unrest, it's like we're the ones who need to listen to the needs of a war zone, have our spiritual awareness and embody both the local and the absolute? Can we embody both so we can bring that wisdom to all these beautiful fora that are exploring how to have peace, how to live differently? But I see a huge gap in the absence of spiritual leaders. But we haven't matured enough yet. We haven't evolved enough yet. Spiritual leaders en masse. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. And if you were for a moment to uncouple it from a spiritual leader, but the concepts or the views of spirituality in and of itself, what ones do you feel are missing from those conversations around social change or environmental protection or peace building, etc.?
I think something that everybody is called to, which would help all of us and all these issues we're touching on, is how we connect with the earth. And it's beautiful how you started with an acknowledgement and like a blessing for the earth at the start, Robert. The recognition, we kind of have all these techniques for finding unity consciousness, but it's under our feet. Like we are part of an ecosystem. We are nature, but we talk about going out in nature or having a nature bath, and it's like, but it's not separate. Like the thinking that nature is separate, and then we have to do something to connect with it. It's like there's something off there for me. And I think the more we can just put roots down through the floor, through the foundations of the building you're in, put roots down and see if you can listen. And the pace, the rhythm of Mother Nature, let that influence everything you do, how you think, how you operate, rather than being influenced by this little thing that's in our back pocket, by our phones. Like, we're out of sync with our human nature. And that's available to all of us without any spiritual context at all. And there are copious transformations that can come if each of us do that. It's like an inner self-inquiry. What has made me feel that there's me and there's nature? Where did I buy into that? Like, I breathe the air. I don't think about the next breath of air. I automatically breathe. I make an assumption there's going to be fresh air there. Like, look at the trees that are taking care of that for you. They're taking care of it. So like, what would it be like to orient and to recognize, oh yeah, my in-breath and my out-breath is, we're codependent on each other. Myself and this tree outside my door. What can we do to start really recognizing and remembering that we are the ecosystem, we are nature, and that can have a huge influence on our lives.
Yeah. Two things that we've been doing at Kripalu for a while now around this has been whenever we have a big strategic question for the organization, we start out on the land. So senior leaders go out into the land and we'll sit and we'll ask, what do you want to have happen here in relationship to this question or whatever it is? And she is full of very clear direction. It's this. And you go, okay.
Always. Yes.
We'll go do this. And I often give the example of, we've all lived in that town or village at some point where there was a restaurant, and every 6 months that restaurant sort of opened and closed, and the next people came in and said, oh, we'll make it an Italian restaurant, and then we'll make it a Chinese, and then a Vietnamese, and then a whatever. And if somebody just sat down and asked that land what it wanted to be, how it wanted to be in service, I guarantee it won't say a restaurant. It'll say something else. And then if you did that, that business would probably be successful there. And so that, I love that strong encouragement just to be in an actual conversation with this living earth, right. which is not separate from us. We're like, I think we're like little trees or shrubs or mushrooms, extensions of this earth.
We are. Yeah.
And the second thing that we've been doing at Kripalu is trying to be as best we can within a sort of a wider society that doesn't care about these things, trying to be more in a rhythm of that sort of natural flow with nature, like our ancestors did for up until, relatively recently in this natural flow. So how that looks like in a very practical way is you and I know, Jack, that uh, the sacred festival of Imbolc for honoring the goddess Bridget at the beginning of February. And really, before that is a time of deep rest and deep winter. And every animal knows that. They hibernate, all these things. And so, as an organization, instead of jumping on this like January 1st, new year, new you, go, 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 it's like stay slow, stay in the winter, and then wait till the beginning of February to launch any new programs or projects. And that's what we do at Kripalu now. Just to be in a greater rhythm with that, whilst knowing that there's still, unfortunately, many things about how we operate that are outside of that rhythm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I see the symbol of St. Bridget right over your head.
There she is. Yeah.
There she is.
Yeah. And the Sheila and the yeah.
Oh, you have a shit in a gig.
Yeah.
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 Ancient feminine forces.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that creative birth and death, it's quite connected to our female bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the feminine that kind of directs this, and it's Mother Earth. And there's something about that, isn't there?
Yeah.
That creativity is in all of us, and to find the feminine, regardless of our gender, find the feminine that holds that space for ourselves, for our own healing and our own growth. How can we find the feminine and honor it within us?
Yeah.
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 I'm glad you guys listen to the earth in that way for guidance. The wisdom is extraordinary. Yeah, from Mother Earth.
Yeah. And I think about a lot of the big peace movements have had such uh, uh, feminine and also female aspect to them to the end of violence. So I think about the incredible work in Liberia. I can't remember the name of the movement, but it was the mothers, and they came together and they just said no more. They all dressed in white, and that became their symbol. And they just called everybody into a different conversation.
Yes.
And it got to the point where I think they barricaded the sort of warlords into an office, and they said, "We're not letting you out until you have a peace deal. That's it. We're your mothers." And culturally, that meant something still. I don't know if that would work in America or in Ireland or whatever, but that level of respect for the mother role,
yeah,
certain parts of the world still holds.
Yeah.
What do you think is some of the feminine principles that we're missing or that would really serve us in the work of peace building?
Mm. Yeah. I'm trying not to jump on the obvious ones. I think being in touch with listening. Like if we think of Mother Earth, she doesn't ask for so much. She has ways of healing herself, even though we make species extinct every day now. And she has a capacity to burn off the human race without a problem. But there's patience. She's giving us time. I don't believe Mother Earth is going to sacrifice herself. I think she'll burn us off rather than be destroyed. But she will reinvent herself. And if human race becomes extinct, something else will show up. It's happened before that there's never not been people on this planet. And that willingness to have patience, to wait to see what happens, to be available with wisdom if they're asked, if she's asked. And I think asking the feminine and being willing to hear it is something that we have to do in order to let the feminine rise up, play its part. It's not really invited to the table yet. And I think this is the biggest obstacle. Like, as you mentioned there in that last example, there was something in the culture that allowed the mothers to play that role and lock the dudes into a room. Mothers, my experience of being in the US as a woman in the US is that no, that respect isn't there for women. It's not. But if there's another way, if that's not our cultural way, we've got to find another way. And I think slowing down and learning how to listen and how to ask for help and ask for guidance, because the answers are there. The guidance is there. We mightn't just want to hear it because we want to do it our way because we're right. So how do we move from that to like listening and moving from me and I'm right into this is a collective response? You know, Mother Earth, the feminine, and each other. No one of us is going to have the solution. I think that's what's super exciting about this social change wave that's going on now. Those of us who are involved in it seem to have recognized we can do none of this as individuals. Ain't going to work. It is a collective process. It's collective intelligence. And it's not just people to people or the CEOs to CEOs. It's like, no, there's got to be layers and layers of, like, I think of like a spiral that goes up and goes down. You know, we need some hierarchy because that's how we function. Somebody has to be the figurehead of an organization because that's the legal structures we have. However, how is responsibility and decision-making happening in every organization and inter-organizationally? How do we support each other? And these are new models that we have to cultivate, but we can't do it unless we're prepared to listen to wisdom that will be greater than ours.
Yeah. And I'd add in that the something about, I don't know if this is strictly a feminine principle or not, but sometimes I hear the story of, well, humans are the problem. And I don't think Mother Earth sees us that way at all. And I think that is like a self-violence that drives some of our behavior and keeps us in this story of not enough and not whole. And if we could let go of that story from the conversation around how do we live in right relationship with this ecosystem that we are a part of and one with. And in addition to that, you said maybe we're not willing to hear the answers. I think it's because we're not willing to live the implications of the answers, which involves change and involves sacrifice. And that's another thing that certainly mothers, Irish mothers go all the way to martyrdom and hold that badge with such a pride. But there can be sacrifice, which is held in a powerful and sovereign way. And I think the earth is doing that and showing us that right now. She's showing what it looks like to sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice. And unfortunately, there will come a moment, if we don't choose to show up differently, where she will say, okay, the experiment is over, and shake us off like fleas and have some other experience. But your points about patience and just this incredible sense of love that she will give to us, this abundance, every day, no matter how we treat her. She's like, no, you still get food, you still get this. And then what we're doing with all of that is a very different story.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That unconditional love that is, we all have that capacity, but it's particularly strong with mothers. It's particularly strong, that, and that's what she does. It's like, here's your food, here's your fresh water, here's resources to build shelter,
Yeah.
regardless of like, we're just going to cover you in concrete because that's progress,
Yeah.
you know?
Right. And
Yeah.
and Jack, as two Irish people, um, it's rare that they allow us to be together. And our beautiful island has had an incredible history with pain, so much pain in it. But it also has found a level of peace that people thought was unthinkable around the world. What what do you think is what did we do spiritually well there?
You mean the north of Ireland?
Yeah,
Is that the troubles? There was an external facilitator is one thing,
yeah, yeah.
which gave us an ability to hear each other and give us skills to hear each other. I think that the deal breaker, though, my own personal opinion, is that the energetic shift came in my own recognition when when there was an acknowledgement of the three independent cultures of England, the Republic of Ireland, and the North of Ireland. It's like these are three independent, we've got to see each other as three independent
Hmm.
bodies, and therefore it's a tripartite agreement around the table going forward.
Hmm.
And I think seeing each other as equal partners, that's the respect. There it is, same
Hmm.
status, same level of microphone to each one. For me, that was the deal breaker.
Hmm.
What about you?
When you say deal breaker, do you mean like the thing that shifted for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Then I
I
felt, oh, we're out of it. We're out of it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll get through this without tearing up, but I'm having a moment where uh, I wonder, was that designed by the spirit of the land? Um, so for those that don't know, the Irish often held the number three tattooed on my arm is a very, very sacred sort of number to the Irish. And often the goddess was represented in triple form. And I wonder, was that part of the ancient medicine coming through in this time of the three together, actually seeing each other, the three sides of the goddess, and saying, oh, that's part of the reclamation of the wholeness again. I don't know.
Oh, that's beautiful. I can kind of feel that in my body. The way something goes, oh yeah, that's resonating in some part of me that my brain doesn't know. Some
Yeah,
other part of me is feeling that that's bang on.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember there was two moments where I just wept during that process. One was when um, the whole island voted in a public referendum, right? And it was about, did we agree with this proposed peace deal or not? The whole country got to vote on it, not just the politicians, which is incredible. It's an incredible way to do that. Not just a group of people that would be voted in or out in 4 years' time, but the whole island got to exercise their vote because it meant to the people of the Republic or the South of Ireland that they would give up their claim to the territory of the North of Ireland. And that and there was I think it was like 80 something percent of the people in the Republic of Ireland said, yes, we agree to give up our claim to that part of the land, which our ancestors held as ours and united and all of these things. That felt like an act of sacrifice for peace that I think not a lot of people really understand how big that was. And my heart broke when I cast my vote and the country decided together to do that. And the other piece was when then there was decommissioning happening. And this is, I think, also a very feminine principle. When the guns were being decommissioned, and there was a lot of steps in that process. And there was one person, the IRA had decommissioned a lot of their guns, and there was sort of evidence of this. There was photographic evidence that these machine guns and whatever had been sort of destroyed and then sealed up in concrete, and they could never be used again. And somebody on the other side said, we want the photograph and we want to put it in the media. And Tony Blair, who was then the Prime Minister of Great Britain, uh, lots of flaws to Tony Blair and his decisions and how he led and all these things. But this moment, he said, you never humiliate your enemy. And I think the fact that he called people to a higher place in that moment, to the highest part of themselves, I think that it didn't allow that stain, that sort of, the teabag stain of that to stay on the peace agreement. He kept it clean of that energy. And I don't know, for me, that part of the story really touches me because I think he was in his soft slowness, right? He was in the soft slowness, which is, I think, what is so much of what you're inviting us into, Jack, is to slow down and to soften and to listen. And I think he did that as the Prime Minister of England for the people of that whole island. And again, I don't know, there's something so deeply touching about that for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. The need to be right is, well, then you need to be wrong. And he just removed it.
Yeah. He went to that in-between space, of
restoration, Yeah.
I see where you are. I see where you are. What about here? Why don't we go here instead? Yeah.
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 Yeah. He did. Beautiful.
Yeah. Jack, we're just at our time. I'm wondering, maybe we can all just kind of rest into a little bit of peace together, just for a few moments, just the way we started. So if people want to close your eyes or have a soft gaze. And just feel the presence of that living earth, not just below you, but through you. Perhaps we can hold a soft sense of gratitude for how we are provided for. And to ourselves, we offer the word peace to the world. And gently releasing ourselves from any sense of practicing, allowing our eyes to float open. Jack, a real pleasure as always. Thank you so much for your time and all of your beautiful wisdom and guidance.
Thank you for what you're doing, Robert. You're fulfilling something very precious on the planet right now. So may the forces be with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you all for joining us so much, and anybody watching this recording later. And there's links in the chat to how you can connect in with Jack's organization, the Association for Spiritual Integrity. His website is there, spiritualintegrity.org. Really beautiful organization doing great work, and kind of feels like it's only getting started, which is wonderful. Yeah. So everybody, in the next 48 hours, if you can find yourselves outside, go rest up against a tree and just ask that tree, do you have anything you want me to know right now? See what comes. Journey well. See you on the next one.